so far. So we will go ahead and proceed. I've done this workshop several times and people tend to find it helpful. It also typically generates a lot of questions. So as I'm going along, if there's things that you want clarified or you have a question about your particular situation, please don't hesitate to ask. You don't have to hold it until the end. I'd rather discuss it when it's relevant to the content that we are discussing. So if it generates a question for you, don't hesitate to ask. The things that I'm going to talk about today are up here on the board. I really have this presentation broken into two different sections. The first section I'm going to talk is about salary negotiation as it relates to accepting a new position. So if you are out there in the job market, you are preparing to graduate, or you're preparing to make a transition in your existing career, go to a different company, into a different position, I want to talk about salary negotiation in that realm, because that's a circumstance that is pertinent to a lot of people. Okay, it's time for me to move on, it's time for me to move up. How do I negotiate a better salary? The other half of the presentation that I'm going to talk about is negotiating a current salary. So if you are in a position that you intend to stay in, but you want some strategies for potentially negotiating your salary within that current position, I do want to put a little bit of attention there as well, because the strategies and the tools that you have available to you are pretty different. So hopefully one of these two topics will apply to you. The first one that we will talk about today, though, is accepting a new position. And I really have it broken down into two different subcategories of research and negotiation. So in a nutshell, if I only had 3 minutes to give you advice and tell you everything you needed to know about salary negotiation, this is what I would tell you. Number one, you need to research. We're going to talk about how to research and what to research, but you do need to research before you go into the negotiation. Number two, I would encourage you not to underestimate your worth, because we're going to talk a little bit about setting an anchor, and you want to make sure that you don't set your anchor lower than where it needs to be. Consider all the benefits and ask questions before you accept an offer. And then number four, be polite but firm. So I would say those are the four main principles of salary negotiation, but clearly I want to dive a little bit deeper into each one of those principles. So accepting a new position, phase one, research, because that's what you have to do before you are able to do a salary negotiation. So before you even get the job offer, when you have decided that it is time to enter the job market, again, whether they're forcing you out of school or you're choosing to make a transition in your career, you need to begin doing your research. Some places that I would encourage you to do your research to find out what your worth is. Glassdoor.com is a good place to go to see averages. Salaries.com is a good place to go to see averages. You can look at the BLS website, bls.gov, the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That will give you some national averages on different types of positions. These websites are pretty good for giving you national averages. What I would also encourage you to do is to make sure that you're taking geography into account. Because if you're planning on living in the Kansas City metro area, then your pay may be very different than if you're planning on living in Los Angeles, right? Just because the cost of living is so vastly different. I always think, I work at the University of Central Missouri, and I used to work in the career services realm, and I served students who were majoring in criminal justice. And they used to see these job postings for probation officers out in California that made like $70,000 a year. You're like, oh, that's awesome. I'm definitely going to move to Los Angeles because nowhere here is going to pay me $70,000 a year. I'm like, well, it's actually still not any money. So if you are thinking about relocating and you're wanting to compare costs and see, okay, I know what I need to make to be comfortable in Kansas City, but I'm thinking about going to Austin, Texas. I don't know what I need to make in Austin, Texas to be as comfortable as I am in Kansas City. I recommend the website bestplaces.net. And if you go into bestplaces.net, you can go and you can search your geographical area. And so I could put in Kansas City, Missouri, $60,000 a year. And then I could put in Austin, Texas, and hit search. And it will tell me what that equivalent is in Austin, Texas. And not only will it give me a raw number, but it will give me the demographic breakdown. So what's more expensive? Is it housing? Is it childcare? Is it transportation? Is it food? And so you can think based on your own lifestyle, which of those numbers you need to be most concerned about. So again, that's a part of your research, not just knowing on average what a position pays, but also knowing what you need in order to be making your worth within a specific geographic region. And then finally, make sure that you're looking specifically at your field and your industry. As most of you are probably in healthcare or healthcare adjacent types of fields, there's going to be a wide variety. So make sure that you're finding as specific information as you can. So again, this is before you even get the job offer, before you even get brave and walk into somebody's office to negotiate your salary, you have to start your research. And as you are going through this research, there are 3 numbers that you are wanting to prepare. And if you don't listen to anything else I say today, this is probably the most important information. This information comes actually directly from a book called How to Make $1,000 a Minute by Jack Chapman. If anybody has some extra reading time available and you want to know everything there is to know about salary negotiation, I recommend this book very, very strongly. But what Jack Chapman says is, in order to be prepared for a successful salary negotiation, you have to have 3 numbers. And we call these your ISN values. And so that stands for I is your ideal value, S is your satisfactory value, and N is your no-go value. So before you walk into any negotiation, you have to know, okay, ideally, in a perfect world, this is how much money I would want to make. However, realistically, this amount of money would be satisfactory. And then finally, you have to know, and this is the bottom of the barrel. This is where no matter how fabulous the opportunity seems and how much I want to get connected with this organization, that I have to walk away because I can't support myself or support my lifestyle on that particular amount of money. So those are your 3 values: your ideal, your satisfactory, and your no-go. And we call those your ISN market values. Now, in order to uncover your ISN market value, there's an equation up here. And it's your ORV plus your IV plus your RF plus your bennies and perks. The end. No. So what your ORV is your objectively researched value. And so that's that number I was just talking about. If I'm going to be objective and I'm just going to look at different websites and I'm going to look at different positions that are posted, this is the type of money that people in my field make. That's your ORV. That's your starting number. Your second number is your individual value. Very often, especially if you are a career changer, you are bringing some additional individual value to your position. So like my position right now is I'm an assistant professor of business communication. And I work at an AACSB accredited school. I can go in and find out what those people make. But if I were to go into a salary negotiation, there are some additional things that I am bringing to the table. So I do a lot of this, for example, travel around to a lot of different places and talk to people. I am a nationally certified etiquette trainer. I have some other things that I'm bringing to the table that add value to my department and value to my university. So I might possibly be able to negotiate within a wider range, because this is what positions usually pay, but here's the other value you're getting when you're hiring me. So that's your IV. And some of you may have an IV. You may be very skilled in a certain software. You may be very skilled in a certain procedure. You may be willing to work in an area or a region that has trouble attracting talent. So your ORV is what people make. Your IV is what your added value is. Then we have your RF. And your RF is your risk factor dollars. So for example, I don't know if we have any NFL players in here, but when people go into the NFL draft, they get to make millions and millions and millions of dollars because their career is going to be very short, likely, right? So they've got to do the best they can before they can't work in their field any longer. That would be like a risk factor value. Okay, I know that I'm in a risky position, so I have to elevate. More realistically, my husband, for example, he works in the transportation industry and he works on commission. Now he has a base salary, but the majority of the money that he earns is based on the accounts that he manages. Those are risk factor dollars. So when he's negotiating a salary and they're like, here's what the salary is, but here's your potential for compensation if you ship all the trucks or whatever he does, right? He has to consider, okay, well, there's going to be certain seasons where the shipping's good. There's going to be certain seasons where the shipping's bad. There's going to be different things that affect the transportation. I need to take all of these different risk factors that are going to affect my bottom line, and I need to consider that when I'm calculating my base salary. Okay, so there's all sorts of different industries that have risk factor attached to them. Or again, maybe you specialize in doing some new and cutting edge procedure and it's a little bit risky. It's not quite, not like illegal or anything, right? But it may not be a standard procedure, and so you don't know where the market's going to go for that. Those are risk factor dollars. And then finally, bennies and perks. And that stands for benefits and perks. So all this money that they say they're going to pay you, plus all the other things that are going to be considered a part of your package. This can be health care, this can be child care, this can be relocation expenses, this can be time off, et cetera, et cetera. So all of these things factor in to your value. So again, this is what you need to uncover. You need to walk through each of these particular items, and then you need to come up with 3 numbers. Your ideal number. In a perfect world, if all the stars were aligned and I was paid my perfect value and everybody recognized how awesome I was, this is the amount of money I want to make. Your satisfactory number. This is the amount of money I expect to make. This is what would feel good to me. And then finally, your no-go number. No matter how good the opportunity seems, if it can't pay me enough to survive at this point in my life, I probably can't accept that position. Okay. That is the first step. Before, like I said, you even go into that salary negotiation, you have to do your research. And I would encourage you to write these numbers down. You don't have to necessarily be prepared to slip them to an employer on your desk right now, but you need to know very concretely what these numbers are, because there are different points in the salary negotiation where you might be asked about how much you expect to earn. And it's going, which of these numbers you share, where you share in that range is going to be dependent upon where you are in the interview process, which is what we're really going to get to now, the actual how to negotiate. And I'm going to give you 8 different steps. Before I go into those 8 steps of negotiation, I just want to put out there on the table that this typically makes people nervous. Most people don't enjoy salary negotiation. There are some people that do. Some people just kind of have that sort of rush, right? But the majority of us, it makes us nervous. We want to get it over as soon as possible. We tend to rush through the process because it makes us uncomfortable. So if that's kind of what you're feeling in your head, like, oh, this sounds awful already, that's what most people experience when they go through salary negotiation. I do want to say, though, on the other side of that, you should go through the salary negotiation process. The worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to come out the other end making the exact same amount of money that they offered you in the beginning. But everybody should try to negotiate their salary. So, how do you do that? Here's how you do it. Number 1, think about timing and attitude. I sure can. Yeah, Jenny has a copy of them, so yeah, absolutely. No, take notes. So think about timing and attitude, because where you are in the interview process says a lot about how it is you should be approaching this. And I'm going to talk about the 3 stages of budget, fudget, and judge it, and so you can kind of understand where employers are at. But just as a brief overview, so if you were at your first interview, it's like a phone interview and they're just doing the typical screening of candidates. They haven't invited you to their place yet, or maybe they have invited you to your place yet, but you're just meeting with HR. You're not meeting with a hiring manager, somebody in your field. If you are asked about your anticipated salary in that first interview, the screening interview in most instances, try to deflect the question. Statistically speaking, the further you can weigh into the process to discuss salary, the higher your salary will be. So the thing I would encourage you to do is to try to deflect. But most people, especially people in the position of hiring, are savvy, and they're going to press you. If they asked you for a number, they probably care about a number. And so if you're asked at this point in the process, my suggestion would be to provide a range. So you know where your ideal number is at, and you know where your satisfactory number is at, and you know where your no-go number is at. Provide a range that's somewhere between ideal and no-go. Don't go all the way down to no-go, but provide a nice wide range. Now, if you are asked later on in the interview process, so you made it through the screening process, they did a phone interview or two, now they invited you to their site and they took you out for lunch and they introduced you to your potential future colleagues and all of that type of stuff. In that particular interview, if you are asked a number, you need to be prepared with a number. That we don't give a range anymore at that point in time. We need to be actually ready to play ball and have our number in mind. That number should be somewhere between your ideal and your satisfactory. In your current position, you can try to deflect and you can say, you know, I'm really more interested in this position because of the reputation of the organization and I'd prefer to talk about compensation once we both decided I'm the right fit. Or you can just tell them how much you make, and if it's around the range that you think that they would also be at, you can simply state. If that's not the amount that you're willing to work for anymore, you can say, I currently make this. I love working for my current employer, so in order for me to make a successful transition, there has to be additional incentive. Maybe a little bit more, but you can understand, like this is what I make, this is not what I'm going to make in my next job, because I'll stay here where I'm happy. Okay, good question. So the reason that we have these different stages, so the reason that sometimes in the beginning of an interview we say, oh, I can make this amount of money and it's this big broad range and as long as it fits in there, it's okay. Whereas later in the interview we say, no, I need to make this exact amount of money, is because of what's going on with the employer and their evolution as far as how they see you as a candidate. And that's where we get to budget, fudget, and judge it. I want to use an example here about my sister because she's wild, and it's like this perfect example. It's about buying a car, but I'll make the connections for you. Okay, so when somebody has an open position, they are typically in what is called a budget stage. Somebody is vacating the organization, or they've created a new position with an organization, and they have in their mind, this is how much money that position costs. And this number could be based on the person that's vacating the position, or maybe the person that's vacating the position had tons and tons of experience and was making way too much money. And so they see this as an opportunity to bring in somebody new and calm that piece of their budget a little bit. No matter what's going on there, they are in the budget stage. And that's how they are assessing potential candidates. So my sister, when she started a new job, she was working locally and she started a job where she was going to be commuting about 100 miles a day. She drove a large SUV. That didn't make sense to be commuting 100 miles a day, right? They had the SUV paid off. It still had quite a bit of value. They knew that they could trade it in and get reasonable trade-in value. So when they went to the car dealership, they were like, okay, we know we're going to get, I don't know, let's say $18,000 for our trade-in. It was a decent trade. It was a good trade-in. So what we should do is we should take that $18,000 and we should get a little Ford Focus or a little Chevy Cruze or a little compact car that we can get for that price, because wouldn't it be nice to have a commuter car and no car payment, right? That's the way our minds work. That is our budget stage. We know we need a new car. It should cost about this amount. We can pay about this amount. So that's what we should do, because that's the best and most fiscally responsible thing to do. When an employer is in those initial phases of screening a candidate, they are in a budget phase. This is how much money we have in our budget for this particular position. So we're going to find the best person we can that fits in that space. Okay? So what happened to my sister is she gets to the car dealership and they're walking around and they're looking at the reasonable, logical cars to purchase, right? As they had planned. And the car salesman comes up to him and she says, what are you looking for? She says, well, I'm commuting now, da, 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 da. He's like, oh, you're commuting. I bet safety is a really big concern because you're on the highway so much. And I bet that you would like to have a car with fully loaded safety features, because winter in Missouri, she just moved here from Texas, so she was already a little feeling that way anyway. Let me show you this Mercedes C300, okay, which is about the same size as the cars that you're looking at. They actually get a little bit better gas mileage, but they have all of these crazy safety features. So he shows her the gorgeous Mercedes C300, and she's like, oh, that's nice, right? That's nicer than what I had in mind, but think of all the money we'd save on like safety or whatever, right? Like, you're not going to have to worry about me on the highway, honey, because this car drives itself. Okay? That's the fudge it stage. When somebody meets you and they're like, well, we had this whole in mind and this is how much money we're going to pay somebody, but then they meet you and you're awesome. Well, okay, maybe with the experience that they're bringing in, with all the bells and whistles, with the airbag that won't kill you or whatever your feature is, right? Maybe we could find a little bit of extra money to incentivize this person to come into our organization. Okay, maybe we could fudge it a little bit. So then she takes the car out on a test drive. She shouldn't have done that, right? But she takes the car out on the test drive, and it was the smoothest ride she'd ever had in her life. And when a car even got within her peripheral, it like gave her a message on the dash. If she started to swerve, it corrected her. It had all of these really awesome safety features, plus it still got good mass mileage. And really, they didn't want to have a payment at all, but they could take out just a little bit of money and have a small payment. Her husband could probably trade in the truck, and they could get something with a lower payment there, right? Because now she was driving the car, and this was the car she was going to drive. That's you, right? You're the Mercedes C300. And when you get far enough along in the interview process, that is the way that you want people to value you. We will do what it takes because this person is adding value to our organization. And that's why we want to wait as long as we can in the interview process, because we want people to get to that judge it phase. We want people to have enough exposure to us and be as excited enough about us as we can that they just can't wait to drive you off the lot, right? She got the car, by the way, and when she took the first rock to the windshield, she knew why Mercedes weren't great commuter cars. But anyway, she drives in style and she loves it, and she feels like she's better than everybody else, which is really kind of her thing. So it's great. But again, the perfect analogy, in my opinion, and entertaining for those phases that people go through when they're making an evaluation about what they want. And so when you are asked these questions in an interview, there's only so much you can do to not answer the question, and you don't want to be evasive and you don't want to play games. But when we talk about trying to push this conversation off if you can, that's why. Because we want to have enough interaction and exposure to people that we are working through the phases of their decision making. Okay, so think about your timing. Number 2, set the anchor. If you are in a position where you are going to need to give them a number, they've pressed you, you've deflected, they've pressed you again, then it is time to give the number. And you want to give a high number. You don't want to give a ridiculously, laughably, get out of my office high number, right? But you want to give a hot number that's somewhere between your ideal and your satisfactory. Sometimes people, their mind does tricks like, oh, I should give a low number so I get the job. Yeah, and then never get paid anything, right? Give a number that's a little bit higher, because the first number they could put out there is called the anchor. And the anchor is the number by which all other numbers get judged. So if you anchor low, if the position, if you say, oh, 65,000 is great. You're like, oh, we were thinking 80, but okay, 65,000, what about 62? Okay, that becomes the number by which all other numbers are judged. So if it is time to say the number, make it high. Not stupid high, okay, but high. You may not get that number, but it's better to work your way down from a number that's a little bit high than to work your way down from a number that was too low to begin with. So set the anchor. Step 3, slow walk the process. When they come at you with an offer and they say, we're super excited to have you join our organization, we'd like to offer you this, even if in your mind, if you're like, drop the phone, that's so much money, you don't say that. Okay, you say, thank you so much. I'm super excited to have the possibility to join your organization. Can I please have some time to think about this? And they will almost always say yes. If they say no, then That's questionable, and you might want to think about that, right? But they almost always say yes. Well, when do you need to know? If they say, I need to know by 4 o'clock today, you probably don't have as much wiggle room in the offer. Because a candidate that needs to know, or an organization that needs to know with immediacy, has could potentially have a couple different things going on. More than likely, they need to get the position filled fast. And so they have probably already thought, if candidate A doesn't work out, we'll offer to candidate B, and if candidate B doesn't work out, we'll offer to candidate C. So I need to know by 4 o'clock today because I need to get on with this process. If it's not you, it's the next guy. Which doesn't mean that you can't negotiate at all. It probably just means that there are backups and situations going on within that organization that will limit your negotiation. If they say, oh, sure, you can have some time, why don't you get back to us by the middle of next week? Take the weekend, talk to your family, look at houses, whatever you need to do, and get back to us. That can sometimes be an indication that you actually do have a little bit more wiggle room. If they're willing to give you time to consider, they probably really, really want you to say yes. Again, there's unfortunately very few universal truths when it comes with anything with communication. There's a lot of noise, it's messing this up, but in general, a short timeline to decide means that the salary is reasonably fixed. A longer timeline to decide means that you have a little bit more leverage. And then really consider the offer made. It's really, really important. I know that I've worked with a lot of, especially young professionals over the year that are like, oh man, it's not what I was hoping for. I understand that. I never get paid what I hope for, right? But let's think about it, and let's think about all of the different things that pile onto this. Okay, and so that is what we call considering the entire package. And different organizations are going to have different packages to offer. I know that even though I will never probably be a millionaire working at a mid-sized, moderately selective regional institution in Warrensburg, Missouri, I also know that I have really exceptional health care, or health insurance anyway, or even access to exceptional health care. And I know that my employer, I'm paying a very, very low amount myself, and my employer is paying upwards of $700 a month to insure me. Like, that's part of my package, right? Because I could go somewhere like where my husband works, where he makes a lot more money, but has awful health insurance, and it makes a big dent out of our pocket. Vacation time, sick days, personal days. Sydney was just telling me that, just put you guys on blast, right? That the med center, that their office is only closed on December 25th this year. I'm off like a month, right? Like, they probably make more money than I do, but I have way more time off. So let's do that balance there. These are the things that go into your package. Sometimes people pay relocation expenses. Has anybody moved recently? It's really expensive, huh, Jenny? And you just moved across the metro, right? Or within the metro. Yeah, try moving to like North Dakota or wherever, right? It's thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. Sometimes people will offer you relocation expenses. That's a one-time perk, but that can make a difference. Are they offering you car? Are they offering you mileage reimbursement? Do you have an expense account? Again, all of this factors into the package. Sometimes we get so focused on that number that they say, this is our salary, that we forget to think, oh, they're giving me a car, which means that I don't have that car payment, or that I can get a lesser vehicle, and I don't have maintenance, and I don't have this, and I don't have gas, and I don't have these things, which effectively contribute maybe another $300 a month to what that offer was. So number 4, consider the entire package. Number 5, prove you are worth it. Again, I would always encourage you to go in when you get an offer to try to negotiate the salary. Thank you so much for the offer. Can I have some time to think about it? Sure, get back to us next Tuesday. Okay, it's next Tuesday. All right, so now I have to call, or I have to go in, and I have to make this the salary negotiation. You need to be able to prove that you're worth it. So when you ask for more, whatever you're asking for, probably money, but there may be additional perks, benefits, things like that you're asking for, you need to really align what it is you bring to what it is they need. Because like I said, like I gave you my list of stuff that makes me maybe a little bit more valuable. That stuff may not matter to every organization, right? Like, oh great, you're a good public speaker and you have wide outreach. We don't care. We need you, doing this at our company or whatever. So you have to think about, why are they so interested in me? And how does my awesomeness, how does my magic align with what they're trying to achieve as an organization? Because when you go into that salary negotiation and you say, I'm super excited for this opportunity, can we talk a little bit about the package? I was actually expecting to make X number, not Y number, which you gave me, X number, based on these particular things that I'm bringing to your organization, or this background of experience that I'm bringing, or this level of specialty that I have. We don't just say, thanks for offering me this number, I'd like this number instead. We want to be able to back that up in a way that aligns with what is important to the organization. And then number 6, use the right language. And the best way to do this is to practice, 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 practice. I have on the back of the worksheet, we won't have time to get to it today because this is just an hour-long workshop, but I wanted you to have the worksheet to take home. I have some sample fake dialogue, so you can go home and role play with your roommate or your spouse or whoever that can read. And it's kind of they're contrived in their dialogue, but again, if you can practice these things and you can practice saying these words out loud, even if you start with a script that some lady in Missouri wrote, you could get better at having this, okay? You can get better at doing this. It's really important to remember that you are negotiating with a person and not a company. You are negotiating for what you want to receive from the company, but the person on the other end of that negotiation is a person. So be likable, be kind. There's a difference between negotiating with a human resource manager very often and a hiring manager. Oftentimes, if it's a hiring manager, so the person that you would report to, for example, in a position, they may have a little bit more authority to do negotiation than a human resource manager. A human resource manager may have been given a range that they have to operate within. And that doesn't mean that you can't negotiate, but if you're negotiating with HR, it may be okay, I have your list of demands, let me go talk and get back to you, where a hiring manager probably doesn't have to take that step back and can do a little bit more of that real-time negotiation. So just understand that it's a person on the other end of that. Even if you're thinking about the company and you're like, I know this company could pay me way more money than what they're offering me, right? Pharmaceuticals aren't doing too bad. It's still a person that you're talking to as a part of that. You always want to ask if the offer is negotiable before you start. And if they say no, you can still try. You can say, oh, okay, well, based on my research, this was actually a more, I don't want to say acceptable, that this was a more realistic salary for somebody with my skill set. You can still try. But if they say that it's not negotiable, it's probably not as negotiable than if they say, yes, the salary is negotiable, right? And then finally, this one can be really, really hard to do, and it's certainly not my forte, but I would encourage you to try it. Use silence to your advantage. So when they say, hey, we're super excited to have you join our team, here's your offer. Actually, here's your offer, right? Or is there something else that you would like from us? Is there just try to be quiet for a little bit? I say this every time I do this workshop. I have a colleague who is a Quaker by practice. I guess that's how you become a Quaker, right? And he's all about silence all the time. And he is the most effective communicator that never says anything that I've ever met in my life, because he is so perfectly comfortable just sitting in silence. It's something that he practices as a part of his religion. And it makes him a really successful, anytime we need something done, negotiated, send him in to do it, because he can sit there silently and contemplatively. And that encourages other people to keep talking. So when they make you the offer, right in your head, okay, well, is there something else? Again, that may prompt them to begin that negotiation for you. You can't be silent forever, but try to count to 8 Mississippi in your head before you respond, because again, that may indicate to them that they need to say something else in addition. So watch your language. Yes, Sydney?
Someone on Zoom asked, If a salary is listed, if a salary is listed on the job posting, is it likely that you can negotiate outside of the listed salary range?
Yes. So it depends. And those of you guys that are employed here at the Med Center know, like when it's public employment, we don't have as much room for negotiation because those things are determined and they're banded. Even within public employment though, it's usually a band. So this position pays $62,000 to $65,000. Well, of course we're going to advertise it at $62,000 because the state's not giving us any money, right? So we got to do the best we can. That doesn't mean that there is not still room for some negotiation within that band. So try. Like I said, the worst thing that's going to happen, unless you're a complete jerk through the process and they don't want to hire you anymore, which I think will happen. But the worst thing that's going to happen is that they are going to say, I'm sorry, this is our final number. And then you have your choice. Do you take it or do you leave it? Use firm but neutral language. And these are real life examples I pulled off the internet. But I think that they're both pretty good. So Tom offered me $50,000. I would be more comfortable if we could settle on 56. I feel that this reflects whatever it is we talked about that you're bringing to the organization. Or thank you so much for the offer. As I mentioned during the interview process, I'm speaking with a couple other companies. If you're able to move the pay to this number, I could accept right now. Firm, but neutral. Here's what you offered me. Here's what I'd like. What can we do? And again, this is the scary part, but this is the part that we have to do in order to advocate for ourselves.
Someone else asked another question.
Sure.
Do you have any advice for negotiation of salaries when you're applying to a starting position, such as straight out of a fellowship or residency? What can you play on to show your qualification? You're qualified since you don't have that many years of experience.
I would say by the time that somebody gets to the point where they're offering you the job, they've already taken that into consideration. And even though people like to get a lot of value for their money, they're not going to hire somebody who's wholly unqualified because they think they can get them cheap. So I see that happen a lot with people who are transitioning into their career field. College students, graduate students, and again, even career changers where they're like, well, I'm not bringing much to the table, so I can't ask for much. And that's actually wrong. The employer made the decision that you are. They made the decision that of all the choices they had, that you're the choice that they want. And so as far as what it is you highlight or what it is you exercise in order to make that negotiation successful, it's the same things that you sold in the interview process, right? Just reminding them of what it is that they liked about you.
And there's a follow-up question, which you kind of already touched on.
Okay.
Maybe elaborate. Should you mention that you would like to be paid more than that range in the first interview, or should you hold off for the second?
Hold off. Hold off until it's necessary to talk about. You want to get it, like I said, as far along as you can and them deciding that they like you. Don't belabor the process. This step is really, really important. Before you go into that salary negotiation, think of everything you want and ask for that up front. I've worked with people before that are like, well, okay, I know that I'm going to want a higher salary, and right now this position doesn't have a designated office, and they said they're going to get one, but I need to make sure I still have an office, and it's going to change my student loan repayment stuff, right? So actually, my sister-in-law was just in this position. She's a physical therapist within a hospital system, and she's transitioning to a bigger type of role. And she was like, okay, I'm going to ask for the salary first, and then when we get that worked out, then I'm going to address the office, and I'm going to address the student loan stuff. No, don't do that, because that feels bad, right? When you're like, oh, I want somebody, and somebody's something, and then they're like, oh, here it is. It's like, oh, wait, now I want another thing. Now I want another thing. Get your entire list of stuff that you need from that negotiation and put that list forward all at once. You may or may not get everything on your list, but if you tell everybody everything you want up front, you don't run the risk of looking fickle, right? Oh, no, actually, I want a higher salary. Here's a higher salary. Actually, I want a bigger office. Okay, here's a bigger office. Actually, I want a company car. No. No, I already gave you a higher salary in a bigger office. But if you say, I want a higher salary, a bigger office, and a company car, let me look at that package and see what I can do within those requests. Okay. Don't negotiate for the sake of negotiation. Again, very few people do this, but some people do. They just want to see how much further they can push it. I would encourage you to always try to engage in a salary negotiation, but when your needs are met or they've played some ball with you, it's done. It's over. You've gotten what you want. They've gotten a good candidate. Done. Okay? Don't threaten or give ultimatums because that could potentially backfire on you. I need this or I'll walk away. Okay, bye. Right? And then know when to stop. Listen for the words final offer because that usually means it's the final offer and they're done talking about it at that point. And then finally, be realistic. As I said, you may or you may not get everything you want. Remember your no-go number, and this is very important. People are probably like, why would I ever need that no-go number? I'm going to say no. We get caught up in the process. We like to be liked. We like to be wanted. We like people to make us offers. Or we get involved with an interview process with an organization. We discover that organization is fabulous, right? They still need to be able to pay you a livable wage. And your no-go number may change. I have known people that have gotten connected with an organization that had so much growth potential that they decided that they could live on a little bit less in order to be connected to that type of growth. But I would encourage you to always be aware of your no-go number. And then finally, make sure that we're considering the full package. Is this a place you can grow and advance? Is this a place that's offering you awesome perks and benefits, etc.?
2 slides ago, number 6, you had firm reference to the bottom line. Do you, John, recommend the strategy of applying to multiple companies and getting a number from using that strategy, or?
A lot of people, I would say, when they're in the job search process, are applying to multiple companies, especially those who are looking to change their career altogether, just getting out of school. I don't recommend applying to multiple companies just to get multiple numbers. The number that should be in here is the number that you determine for your worth. And don't use this line if you're not actually applying other places, because again, we don't need to threaten or manipulate. We just need to be realistic about our situation. So if you are applying multiple places, you can certainly use this. If you're not applying multiple places and you just really want this job with this company, I think that's a really good appeal. I'd really like to work for you. I've been really interested in this organization. This is the number that I had in mind. This is the value I'm contributing that allowed me to reach that number. Your turn. Good question. Other questions?
Someone asked, can you give additional examples of how you can phrase deflecting the salary question early on?
You can say, I think one of the best things to say is that's a really good question. I know that money is really important. However, you guys are still getting to know me. And so I would like to make sure that I'm the right fit for the organization. You could also say, that's a really good question. Right now, I'm just interested in learning about what this organization has to offer. Most of the time, though, you really need to give that range. Like you can choose one of those types of statements, but again, a savvy recruiter, which is usually it's the type of personnel that's doing a first round interview, will likely push you to give a range anyway. Does that help? Zoom person? Okay. Any other questions? I do want to quickly go through these 7 steps. Negotiating a salary increase in your current position is not near as nuanced, and so it doesn't take as long to talk about, but I do know that it's important information to some people. As a reminder, before we go into this, employees are valuable assets. A company doesn't want to lose you unless you're doing a bad job, in which case you should do a better job, right? But hiring, training, and overhead costs make the expense of hiring somebody to replace you greater than the cost of your improved salary. So most people, if they are able, are going to want to retain good employees. So if you are in your current position and you've been thinking, I've been here for a while, I'm doing a good job, I'm exceeding my expectations, it's probably time for me to talk about a higher salary, here are the things that you need to be doing. Number 1, you need to start keeping a career diary. Do this before you request the meeting. So for a month or so before, so you're thinking about it, you're getting ready to make this request with your supervisor, start keeping a diary. Write down the awesome things that you're doing. Because we forget, right? We go into work and we're awesome, and then we go home, we forgot how awesome we were, and then we get up and we do it all over again. So start keeping track of these things. And then request an appointment with your supervisor to talk about your performance and goals. So start making a list of what you're doing well, request an appointment. Number 2, before that appointment, make sure that you review your current package. Sometimes we don't know everything that's in there for us because we got hired and it was overwhelming. We're at this orientation and we signed all these papers, okay? My husband's been with the same company for 12 years, and it was like 5 years ago he figured out he had really awesome stock options. That's awesome, right? But now we have awesome stock options. Review your current package. I mean, they hired him fresh out of college. He didn't know. He was just, like I said, signing papers, right? Go back and look. Make sure that you understand everything you're currently being paid. So the last thing you want to do is ask for something you already have. Prepare your argument. Go back to your calendar, make a list of your accomplishments, and then importantly, compare those accomplishments with the mission of the organization. Because it's one thing to be out there just excelling. It's another thing to be out there excelling within the goals and the mission of the organization that's paying you. So you want to be able to draw those clear parallels. It's like at UCM, we really focus on future-focused academics. So if I was getting ready to go in front of my dean and say, look, dean, okay, then I need to show how what I am doing is future-focused academics, not that I'm just doing the regular old stuff in the classroom. And then do some research to clarify the salary range. So again, we still at some point have to do that research so we're not asking for ridiculous amounts of money. Show that you are value added. So you want to look at how you're performing in your current role. You also want to look at how you might be performing outside of your current role. Like, what's the extra stuff you are doing? Did you cover for so-and-so when they were on maternity leave for 12 weeks? Did you chair this committee or head this initiative that you really didn't have to do, but you really wanted to be a strong contributor? So look at how you're performing in your role. Look at how you're adding value past your role. And then be assertive. When that time for that meeting comes and you have all the information prepared about what you've been doing, how it aligns with the organization, and how you've gone above and beyond, don't beat around the bush. Don't be apologetic. I'm really sorry. Just ask. I've made a list. Here's the things that I've done. Here's the typical compensation for someone in my position. I would like to move to a number that's closer to this one. Can you help me? They can or they can't. They'll try or they won't. And again, in public education or public arena, sometimes this is a lot harder. But I've known people who've had really good supervisors who've advocated for them and they reclassified their job position. No, I can't do that for you as a coordinator role. But you've made a really strong case that you're actually performing at the level of an assistant director. Let me go back to HR and do this like 9-month process, right? But yes, at the end of this, I will advocate for you and maybe you can make a little bit more money. It's very rarely your boss being like, oh yeah, let me write you a check, right? Did you take Venmo? Like, there's a process to it, but you have to put it out there. Here's again some additional language. I'd like to talk about compensation. I've been doing some research. Here's the typical pay based on my performance. I'd like to talk about increasing my salary. Stay at the table. If they have denied your request, ask what you can do in order to meet it next time. Okay, I understand that you can't do this for me right now. This is still something that's really important to me. What could I be doing in my role in order to receive increased compensation? Ask, find out, and maybe there's other things you can get. Maybe again, especially in the public arena, maybe they can't increase your salary. Maybe you could work from home every other Friday. So ask if there are other things, make a list of the other things, those bennies and perks that you don't currently have that you might be willing to accept in lieu of a salary bump. If they make you an offer, if they say, yes, you're right, you've proven your point, you definitely deserve more money, I'm going to work on that for you, get it in writing. Make sure that you send a follow-up email according to our conversation. This is what we discussed. I'm looking forward to finding out more about this. Make sure that it's in writing, that has been documented. Something else I would say is to think about timing, and I meant to say this at the beginning, just trying to finish up in time, so I might have skipped over it. Lots of times we start thinking about this like right now. It's getting to the year end. I'm going to go into 2020 making more money. Depending on how your organization operates, you don't want to ask at the end of a fiscal cycle. So like in Missouri in higher education, our fiscal year starts in July. That's when a lot of people start thinking about their raise, right? Like end of June, like, oh, July is coming up, the new money's coming out. That new money was allocated last December. And these processes take time. So it's better to, if you know that the beginning of your fiscal year is coming up or the start of your quarter, however you're measured, it's better to do it several months in advance of that. Because again, those dollars by the end of the fiscal year have been allocated, and it takes several months usually to move these things through the right channels of human resources. And so I may have asked 2 weeks before the end of the fiscal year, but it's going to take 4 months. So I'm going to have to wait until the next fiscal year for this to come into place. So just make sure that you think about that as well. This is really my body of information. Again, I have some resources there, those scripts that I showed you guys. Like I said, I ripped them off the internet. It's full of excellent information. The other thing that I would encourage you to think about is to look at the Jack Chapman book. If you Google it, you can usually even find a PDF online. It's a highly valued resource by anybody in the salary negotiation business, and it's really awesome if you're looking for the confidence to go into salary negotiation. Any questions?